let me give you my simplified definition of addiction. Addiction is a destructive relationship with any mood or mind-altering substance or experience that robs an individual of the freedom to live well. And again, as we profess over this next 12 weeks, we're going to be wanting to talk about substances and experiences. In fact, you know why we do the substance? Because the substances bring us an experience that we don't get otherwise. Let's go to our readers. My first reader is Miss Terry. Where are you? Okay, she needs a microphone. And we'll come right to you, Miss. Once again, what Terry's going to do, she's going to read this first section. And by the way, this first, Terry, before you do that, let me, you guys know that this is the book, the Our Journey Home book. I'm so lucky I titled this because that's why Jack invited me here. If I had said it something else, I wouldn't be here tonight because we're doing the Our Journey Home series. But it's page 12 in this book is what we're reading here. All right, Terry, take us away.
Without help, addictions always progress as demonstrated by the ways we have increasingly violated our own sense of right and wrong. And without help, we can lose to our addictions our own sense of identity. That is, a realistic view of who we are and how our lives are being lived out. Even our own ability to make healthy choices can be stolen from us by our addictions. It's not like we don't know the difference between right and wrong. It's just that addiction overwhelms us, robbing us of the power to consistently live well. It works out like this. We know what is right and we want to do right, but in the end we find that we have done the wrong thing, and we usually have no reasonable explanation as to why we did the wrong thing and not the right thing, which is what we really wanted and intended to do. Looking back, we've always known in our heart what was right, and we never wanted to do what was wrong. Moreover, we certainly never meant to become addicted to anything. However, in the light of honesty, we will also remember how we've made repeated promises to ourselves and others only to break our promises many times over.
Thank you, Terry. Nope, hang on to the mic. So tell us what you think.
I think it's right, what you wrote, Dr. Zailer.
Please expand on that.
Let's see, just the short answer. I think the jumping off point for me was something that Robert Chirac brought up a couple months ago that I almost died from, the need to be needed. When a mom calls about her son and wonders if he's an alcoholic, her first question really is he going to need me or not? Her second question is he an addict?
Oh. Okay, so how did that play out behaviorally for you, and how did you find yourself out of control?
Inserting myself where I wasn't needed, preemptive strikes of natural consequences as my kids were growing up.
Saving them?
Rescuing, saving, however you want to term it.
Okay. And what would happen?
They'd be rescued, but it plays out down the line when they were no longer under my roof. I had stolen their dignity and integrity. They had no skills to problem solve out there in the real world.
And during this episode or episodes, I'm assuming there was more than one?
Yes.
Because that's kind of the way it is with
I
families.
have 4 kids.
4 kids?
Yes.
What would happen with your dignity?
Oh, my goodness. Behind closed doors, there was lots of crying, embarrassment. What was I doing wrong? When were the grown-ups going to show up? I just didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I didn't deserve for this to be happening. But instead of getting the help I needed for myself, which I didn't even know existed at the time, I kept focusing on other people.
And when you finally came to terms with what it was and how you came to terms with it, What was that like?
Crying, lots of crying.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to share with us? Because anyone in this room is welcome to share with the rest of us on this section. You'll get a mic stuck in front of you, and the camera might see the back of your head, but you're welcome to. I don't know of anything that's more, of the addictions that's more confusing than those addictions related specifically about relationships, especially parents for their children. The instinct for the parents to protect and to provide and to care is so powerful. And when a child is caught up in addiction and they are not protecting themselves or providing for themselves, even in the most basic ways, the parent's instinct is to save their child. And, that's very difficult. Very difficult. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, please.
Oh, thanks. So for me, my instinct was to save my mom.
Okay.
And her instinct was to save her mom. And so as a child, I thought that was my job. And so my addiction came into people-pleasing and rescuing because that's what I saw my mother doing. And so I never meant to get addicted to anything, but I realized I was managing anxiety all the time by making peace. So I didn't know what joy was. I just knew how to manage anxiety. So I was anxious until everybody was okay. And then I took care of that, and I'd get a high from everybody being okay. And that was just the cycle until I finally realized that I was neglecting my own daughters, and they were going to have to do that too. And I was in a toxic friendship, and my 11-year-old started trying to make friends with that woman because it was the only way she could be near me. And that was like the real shame point for me. Like, that's like the digging in the dumpster thing I thought I'd never do, was that my daughter was having to care for me. So it was a relief to know what to do in 12. That, like, it gave me this, step one gave me somewhere to go with that.
That's great. Well, we have two other readings, by the way, and some other folks. So, and I am kind of looking at the clock here. But thank you, ladies. You reminded me in your sharing the reality of how we emotionally prostitute ourselves. That's a crude way to say it. And I've done it. I think we all have. And, by the way, you notice the feeling in the room has changed a little bit here? I sure have. But these discussions, these experiences, and even being connected with the gory details of our brokenness is essential, because this is the essential preliminary work. This is the digging of the footing. And as we begin to move in recovery, it takes a little while, but we can begin to realize that all of our addictions were our training ground. It was preparation. And when you do your work, God brings matching funds for every meeting you go to, for every journal entry you do, for every time you meet with your sponsor and you sit around and you tell your story. By the way, the reason why I love these interactions is because we are telling our stories. That's where the healing is. And as we do this, God brings a reward and a building into our lives and our hearts that far exceeds our own efforts. It's the ultimate investment program. Okay, our next reader is Chase. Where are you, my friend? There he is. Chase needs a microphone. If you guys haven't met Chase, he is one of the nicest, funniest guys. I like him.
My name's Chase. I'm an alcoholic.
Me too.
I'm not good with microphones, so I apologize ahead of time.
It's all right. Neither am I.
All right. Let's see here. Page 24. For most of us, our upbringing instilled in us the instinct to try harder when we failed, and that we should never admit defeat, discouragement, or weakness. This often turns into a stubbornness that can lead people with addictions into a continuous downward spiral of pride and failure and control. The more we've been determined to control ourselves, the more we failed. By refusing to admit our personal insufficiency, we pridefully puffed ourselves up and became determined to control ourselves better the next time. When we failed again, which was almost certain, we became all the more obsessed to control our life and the lives of others. Inevitably, the obsession to rule our life and the lives of others brought on more pride, which brought more failure, and addiction ruled all the more. Pride, failure, and control are the building blocks of denial, which is the pride-based bedrock of addiction. In denial and pride, our self-willed efforts to control our lives and the lives of others, our lives and others become one of our greatest liabilities. And I have to say, this is a very powerful passage for me personally. I mean, I've been struggling with addiction for 10 years. I mean, I was first introduced into Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 18, and I'm 28 now. And I've had brief glimpses of hope, and my life has gotten better a little bit, but then it was always followed by a worse relapse, more of a struggle, harder to admit to myself that I had a problem and to come back into these rooms and to seek help, from God. And it's taken me a long time, and I don't want to get too into my story, but the fact is that I had to surrender. I had to surrender to God in order to be free. And after I did do that, after I did surrender completely and gave up my will, which wanted to kill me. I mean, my will wanted to kill me. It's that simple. And once I gave that will to God and surrendered, the fear has been lifted. The anxiety and love has come into my heart. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I can't tell you guys how amazing I feel. I mean, it's just indescribable. And yeah, that's it.
Wow, thank you, Chase. By the way, I was once called the prodigal on repeat. I didn't understand it at the time. I do, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Chase. Who else wants to share their thoughts, if anyone wants to share their thoughts on that section? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Bill, where are you? Here's my buddy Bill. Wait for the mic, Bill. We'll be right with you.
Step 1 is the prelude and preparation for a life-changing faith and hopefulness. First, we must admit that we cannot solve our problems on our own, no matter how hard we try. As we do this, we get in touch with our center point of our pain and desperation, which is the exact place where we become willing to ask God to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. With God there is hope. Without Him, we have no hope.
Nice edit.
We edited that for TV. For me, it was just amazing that I was trying to quit drinking, and I was out fishing with my son, and he asked me, he goes, when grandpas go to heaven, do they take their fishing poles with them? And I was just like sitting there going, I have no idea why. And shortly after that, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That was God talking to me through a 3-year-old. After that, I mean, he's had a couple of resections over the years and stuff. He's doing great. Praise God. But that's what it took to get my attention. As a 3-year-old tell me there is a God, and there is a God, and He's all powerful. We were able to, it changed our lives. My wife and I were married 37 years still. We've been through total craziness in our lives. But God's used it for His purpose to reach other families. And, you know, it took surrendering, but not only surrendering, but to dying to ourselves over the years. And that's the big thing for me. It was like, and I still have to. I still walk by the cross, and I still take wreckage off the cross and carry it with me for a few days until I get that pain back, and it's too much. And I have to turn it back over to God. But I learned that. And with the brothers and sisters in these rooms, they come alongside and just share with their hearts. And we're all walking in this mess together. And we just have to stick together. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Who else wants to share on this little section? I think in the underwritten dynamic of step one, and I'm not sure that we actually ever just, you know, we talk about working the steps. My sponsor had me working through a workbook. I really didn't like it, but it actually served me very well. And there's some great workbooks out there for you. But I'm not really sure so much if we really work our step one as much as we just come to terms with it. I know that in a workbook or in an exercise we can, and in fact, this is my journal. I buy these little notebooks at Costco. They come in a package of 8 for like $6. Fits the Operation Integrity budget. And I fill them up. And what it does is that it, at the level of my thinking and at the level of my awareness, it helps draw things there where I can begin to deal with it. You know, about 90% of our brain activity is below the level of our own awareness. It's subconscious. And part of the recovery process, part of the journaling, in fact, if you were here last week when we did kind of our tune-up for this, you heard me encourage you to get a notebook, something, whatever you feel comfortable with, and start writing it down with you. Keep it by your bed at night. Keep it in your car. Make it your friend. Because what you do is you start to write things down and you capture them. And little things that pop up into your consciousness, you can write it down, and then you own it. It's yours. And I think our step one is just kind of coming to terms with things that are pretty much evident and obvious to everybody but us. And when we talk about denial, here's a nice little definition of denial. It's where we use a reasonable or rational argument to defy our own reality. You know what? I can't be an alcoholic. I only drink 3 beers a night. My neighbor drinks a 6-pack and he's not an alcoholic. You know what kept me from believing I was a drug addict? Is because I wore starched button-downs, and at the time I paid $100 for a haircut. There's no way I could be a crackhead. There's no way. Step one, I don't think it's ever easy. I was about ready to say step one is easy when we're ready. Poor choice of words. Step one becomes natural when we come to terms with our condition. when we quit playing games with what's going on with our life. Consequence and reality are our friends. The pain that you are experiencing as a result of your addictive behaviors are warning lights. It's trying to get your attention. And the very fact that we can somehow keep going and in all of our denials and in all of our, way that we avoid coming to terms with this is really indicative of the power of hopelessness, because we so need these things. The relationship is profound with our addictions, primarily because they've served us well up to a point, and they've given us something we didn't get in any other way. And I know for me, when I began to come to terms with my powerlessness over my alcohol and my drugs, and powerlessness really over my own hopelessness, I was left alone and without protection of my shame. That profound sense of complete and fatal inadequacy. That I would never measure up, that I would never succeed, never be loved, never be appreciated. And that's where I was. And I have a feeling that one of the reasons why everyone is sitting so quietly and so still is because you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you don't want to draw attention to yourself right now. We are a community of co-sufferers. That is the greatest place in the world to be. Because that is the place where we will find those who go, me too. I get it. I understand. It is astounding how much a pornography addict can identify with a gambling addict. It is astounding how much a sex addict can empathize with a food addict. Or someone who is a love avoider identifies with an anorexic. The alcoholic with the drug addict with the alcoholic. The powerlessness that you experience in your life and the unmanageability of the life is this extraordinarily odd-shaped doorway through which you have to move to find your greatest life. And that's the invitation. I'm going to read you something here. It's written by a famous person. What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things I absolutely despise. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary. Guidance, direction, rules. More, for I know the law, but I still can't keep it. And if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help. I realize that I don't have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me and gets the better of me every time. Now, this is on your handout. This is written by who some people will call the greatest Christian who ever lived, Paul the Apostle. And it's in Romans chapter 7. It's about 10 verses before you turn the page and you come to this there are no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. You see, this odd-shaped doorway where we come to terms with the hopelessness, and the hopelessness as it plays out in our behaviors, in our addictions, and all the consequences that come out of that. All of that is the precursor for you to discover the value and the reality and the hope of no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And that is your future. That's it. So, Gerald May, in fact, there's a great book back there called Addiction and Grace. That book, Addiction and Grace, that is the book that launched me. I came across that book about 12 years ago and read it. It's a hard read. It's a tough read. It's one of those books where you read about 3 sentences and you have to kind of lay it down for 2 or 3 days because you're just like blown away by those 2 or 3 sentences. Here's a quote from our friend Gerald. He says, "To be alive is to be addicted. And to be alive and addicted is to stand in the need of grace." Similar to what Jack was saying earlier, is that we all know that we're all sinners. Many of us kind of forget the practical reality of that. We kind of go through life kind of thinking that it really doesn't pertain to us anymore. It's somebody else's. It's kind of like the alcoholic who forgot that he was an alcoholic, and then he stays sober, but he kind of points fingers at anybody else who struggles. You know what? I am so grateful for my addiction to cigarettes. It took me 7 years to quit. From the time I decided to quit to the time I was finally able to put it down. And that 7 years was a horrendous hell for me. And I'll never forget it. And when I start getting kind of hoity-toity because someone else is, not staying sober or anything else, God reminds me of those 7 years. And I'm going, oh yeah.